Hi, it's me again, Samantha Tong, Labrakeeter Marketing, here with another expert to interview. Today it's Debbie Hutchison, and we're going to be talking about engineering strategy for small businesses. So, Debbie, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Samantha. Good to see you again. Yeah, I'm Debbie Hutchison from Griffin, Perth.
Wow, short and sweet. Yeah, but you're also a fellow marketing expert.
Yes, yes. So you and I have met a few times over the years now, and I'm working a lot in Tayside predominantly with a variety of businesses, but mostly in the SME category. I'm on the Business Gateway Expert Help Scheme, which is a great variety of work. So I get to see lots of different businesses. But yeah, probably my most notable career highlight was with the engineering firm Merlin ERD, because we won a couple of Queen's Awards back a few years ago for international trade. And, that was a really interesting entrepreneurial journey, watching a small company just pick up its skirt, as it were, and run. We were a really profitable, really successful company in the extended reach drilling space. And so really interesting times.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So it's good that you've got that sort of you've got a perspective outside of engineering as well as a good understanding of engineering marketing or marketing for engineering companies.
yeah, yeah, because I
Yeah,
think that's the thing. There's some general principles, aren't there, for
yeah,
marketing anything,
yeah.
but equally, I mean, I used to have some interesting chats with our engineers where they're saying we've got nothing that we can say about this client project, and I'm like, but we have to communicate the amazing work we're doing for clients, and that kind of um, getting people to see things through a marketing lens can be
Yeah.
quite tricky, especially with larger teams of very technical people.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
equally, there's some brilliant ways to connect. Back then they were doing things like a Friday haggler on LinkedIn, which was just a really nice way of engaging technically minded people.
Yeah.
It was in our space, and really it was all to do with our positioning as the experts in extended reach drilling. But
Yes.
something that they could get into, oh yeah, let's get a great one for the haggler this week. So
Yes. And that is really important for I think cross board with engineering companies in particular is establishing yourselves as the expert in your area
yeah, for
and
sure.
building that credibility, like you
Yeah.
say.
Yes. No, it was a good way to do it. Once they were on side and they could see how that worked on LinkedIn, they began to feel less scared or guarded about sharing anything like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. So it's talking about especially smaller engineering firms and marketing strategy. I think it's something that's often missed. They know they need to do marketing and tend to skip quite often to the tactics, the tactical work, which is in marketing terminology, that means the specific work they're doing. So it might be social media, or you might be doing building a new website, or whatever it is. But I think Debbie and I are on the same page with this. If you you've got a smaller budget, so you need to make sure that you're spending it in the right places. So it's really important to get that strategy right in the first place.
absolutely.
So where do you start if you're looking at strategy for an engineering business?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm so glad that we are on the same page, because, I mean, even I was there getting all excited about a little tactic. But yeah, let's go back. So, where do I start? Normally start really with the SWOT analysis of the business, classic marketing, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, looking at that internal dimension and externally, particularly in the business that I was in engineering, the whole sort of carbon issue. We were very much
Yeah.
in the oil and gas space, but the oil and gas space was changing. And so leading on to that, well, from the SWOT analysis is your PESTLE, looking at that political context,
Yeah.
big changes in the governments and legislation, you know, hugely significant for certain sectors. The economic situation within that, social trends, maybe not so much, but you know, obviously it has to be something because we were getting younger engineers coming in.
Yeah, that's the thing. Often that's more relevant from an employer branding point of view, but you still need to think about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's got consequences for marketing because we were very much, you know, the managers were of an older mindset saying, go and make some calls. And the younger people would be coming in going, oh, we don't really like using the phone. And the people at the other end don't want to hear from us on the phone. And we're like, well, so it was almost a generational thing, which comes into that kind of social category of the technology, you know, a lot of consumers, or well, a lot of us in our life as consumers are using tech a lot more apps and things. And then in our job, we might be looking for suppliers to be creating apps or just having, you know, a really amazing website. So being up to date with the technology, we were having a quick chat there about artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And understanding how that relates to your engineering business, your sector, is important. And I think just this context stuff is, in my book, probably a real priority, actually. And, legal as well. And then that environmental and ethical part, which again for oil and gas was hugely important and can be a massive PR tool.
Yeah.
When we get back, you know, onto the tactics stuff. So just understanding what consumers are saying, what your competitors are doing. So just benchmarking what competitors are doing on these different items, environmental policy, this kind of thing. And I think, I mean, customer profiling is probably at the heart of what we do as marketers. So that's got to be in there now. Who's buying from us now? What are they wanting? Are they our ideal customer?
Yes.
Do we want to move up a bracket and lose some of the lower value ones or not? And it's a great chance when you're doing this first, where are we at now? To say, what is our USP?
Yeah.
Because it may have changed since the market's changed.
Everyone should be looking at that and their brand, what their brand proposition currently is, because the world has changed for everyone. Yeah.
And all you need is a couple of new competitors to come in, or an overseas company who maybe hasn't been active in your market, and suddenly your USP is meaningless because you're not the only one making rocket spindles now, you know. So there's quite a lot of work, quite a lot of desk research in that first piece. But the great thing is it's an opportunity to collaborate with colleagues if you're lucky enough to have them, suppliers even, and customers. You know, profile them, maybe interview them like this and find out from you. A great chance to do some research, some market research.
And I find it's amazing often because I often run workshops where they'll have different people from different parts of the business in, and it's not unusual for you know the founder of the business or the managing director to not realize just how much knowledge is there in the business.
Absolutely.
And things that they're in that meeting, but they're learning new things about their customers and what their current issues are, and even sometimes things about, oh, I didn't know the product did that.
Oh, and just that chance even to brainstorm some of this stuff. Because we at Merlin, we took we were getting quite a lot of work in Spanish speaking countries, so we employed a native Spanish speaker. He was not our most senior engineer in the technical side, but obviously, you know, well qualified, well versed in it. But he also brought a load of cultural knowledge about selling in America, for example, that is just really, really key. And I probably actually underestimated, hadn't really thought about that, because I was thinking it all very much sort of from what we would be, you know, in his induction. It was all about us telling him. But of course, he had loads of insight into running courses over there, technical training courses, or trade shows. Well, and these kind of things. So there's a lot of wealth there. So I think, gathering all that in and feeling really secure about, right, we know where we're at, and then we're setting our sights on where we want to go.
Yeah.
Which is all the good stuff you and I know.
Yes.
Mission, vision,
Yes.
values. But you can't underestimate it. And the older I get, the more I see that actually it all comes down to the values. They're such a guide.
Yes.
When you get the tough times or the what should we do about X, if you got a set of values to go back to and guide your decision making, actually everything flows from that. And I probably used to feel it was a bit more of a tick box, but I think, and particularly with what a lot of us we've been through with COVID and a real reprioritization perhaps of life. I'm getting deep here. It is Friday afternoon. But it comes down to your values, because even tied up with that environmental and ethical piece, and this might not always be possible when you're an employee. I understand, you need the job. So the fact that, whatever you're mining or, but somewhere in your company's mission and vision and values, if you can gel with those, you'll find, you get it almost energizes you.
Yes.
Get out and sell it or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think if and engineering is really struggling, engineering firms, especially the smaller engineering firms, they really, really struggle with getting the talent they need in. If you've got those values that fit with potential employees, that's going to make life a lot easier, especially if you tell people about it. The other side to that is I've worked with quite a few firms that do amazing things, but not telling anyone. So just mention that now. Just make sure that you tell people.
Yeah, I know. No, absolutely. But no, you're dead right. I think particularly, specialist niche businesses, to get that great pool of people, you really need not only to sell yourself, but to be thinking ahead, that vision, like, come and join us. We are going to revolutionize whatever sector it is. And that's really powerful, because people want to, but all this find your tribe stuff isn't just to do with hanging out on social media in hobby groups. It almost translates to career choices, and people will make decisions about where they want to put their time and energy. So no, that's good. And I guess the SMART objectives, it's the classic again,
Yeah.
And that is hard. And I think for me, that's hard, pushing companies to be really, especially smaller companies, pushing them to say, right, we've got to get the numbers written down so we know what we're doing. But of course, it makes it easier to measure. And then we know whether we turn things off or turn up the volume, turn up the heat. So it's an absolute given that you should do this.
Absolutely.
But I've seen people just, it's all too hard, I don't want to commit this.
But if you don't write it down, it's not going to happen. If you don't have a target, you're never going to reach it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you write it down, chances are you will.
Yeah, and you can communicate it and get other people on board. So I think that's us. We've done all this sort of analysis where we are now. We're looking ahead. We know where we want to go, and we've got our sort of ducks in a row. Galvanize the team if we are fortunate enough to have one, or we're putting ourselves in the best place to recruit talent. And then really it's, with all that, I think you're looking at your strategy.
Yeah.
Often I find it's either targeting. We are going to target the heck out of our market by getting really clear on some groups, distinct groups within it. Or, depends on the nature of the beast, because some highly competitive markets, everyone's targeting these same niches. But That whole sort of strategy of positioning yourselves as the expert, can really pay dividends as well. You are the go-to for whatever kind of technical design or technique, tool, product, or service. So I've worked, I've seen different people come at their strategy harder, or some just kind of do the old general, let's just go out and see who'll buy our stuff.
Yeah.
And just spending some time getting a good strategy, getting clear on it. And then from that, planning a whole load of tactics that will just be delegated, put everybody's names against the actions, off we go with this plan. And then we can measure at various times to see how it's performing, and whether you need a sort of a redraft or a refinement.
Yeah, what's working, what's not working.
Yeah. So that's the kind of plan I would recommend.
Yeah.
And you do similar.
Yeah, it's pretty much identical to what
Okay.
I do. Yeah.
Right.
I use PR Smith's soft stack model, which is situation, which is where you started. Objective, strategy, tactics, action, who's doing what, and control. So, which is the what's working, what's not working when you look at it. What when you plan on looking at what's happening against objectives, etc.
Yeah, I was so happy when I went to I heard him speak.
Oh yeah.
At an elevator event, and I'd been looking for a framework that fitted this.
Yeah.
And then he explained this, and I thought that's totally it. That would work for almost anything. And to the point of, people are often, we need to do marketing, so that means we need to get straight into social media, or we need to go and get our website changed. Everybody always wants to change, and just like we've been chatting about, it's just, let's take a pause.
Yeah.
Throw the whole lot out. Let's do all the good stuff, the reflection, the research, the work, and then get into things. I also find with the tactics, everyone gets excited about promotion.
Yeah.
Everyone's got an opinion about promotion. But I often start with the product or the service, and I'm looking at that and saying, what can we refine? It could be completely change, but normally it's refinements to make it better gel with that target market.
Yeah. Once you've done all that research and target market, and you look at the product and service, if it doesn't quite match, you need to do something.
And it becomes blindingly obvious sometimes, but people haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So, just whether it's, with the oil and gas business I was in, selling training courses, we very much kind of had benchmarked a competitor's one for the duration. If they ran a 5-day course, we did a 5-day course. If they did a 3-day course, we did a 3-day course. But when you actually then ask clients what they really want, and some of them said, we'd really love a 1-day. I know we can't go deep, but for the maybe senior managers. And then you think, actually, that makes a whole load of sense. And effectively, it's another product we can sell.
And it's a differentiation from your competitors.
Absolutely. And it's like, why has nobody thought of this before?
Yeah.
Squeezing, and even just looking at the nuts and bolts of your product or service. Can you pack more branding in there? Can you put some extra value in there, which kind of touches on the pricing, but also, just so that you've got the best product or service? Or if your strategy is more low cost, no frills, which is perfectly valid.
Yeah.
How does the product or service exude that? Because some people have not matched these things up. They've just had the same product forever. And they're like, no, we want this new strategy. It's like, okay, well, we're going to have to take some stuff out if it's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel I want to jump in here for anyone who's a little bit confused and thinks marketing is all about promotion, surely. Just to explain, marketing in the broader sense, we've got well, the original 4 tactics: product, price, place, and promotion. But there are 3 further P's, which is people, process, and physical evidence. And whenever I get to physical evidence, I think they must have been trying so hard to keep it P's.
I know. I never. It sounds a wee bit CSI when we get onto physical evidence, but it's a really great. Again, you know, we love our acronyms in marketing, but it's a great prompter, isn't it, when you're sitting there, because it's such a big topic, and people are like, "Oh, we need to do something." And we're like, "Well, let's think about it rationally. Let's focus on the product."
And I feel like pricing strategy is something that's often skipped as well, or they don't have enough, even with big companies, they don't necessarily talk to the marketing department. You know, finance is responsible for pricing, that's it. And we want to make this margin and that's the end of it. But pricing is a communicator as much as anything else. It's a key. Sometimes you sell less because you're not charging enough.
Yes. And it could be saying all sorts of things about your business. It could be saying you're distressed, or that you don't value your work, particularly a lot of service-based. And we'll put the gender thing in there. You know, I do find some of the female led businesses or female businesswomen I know, we have a tendency to think, oh, we can't charge higher when we should be pushing that.
Yeah.
And that's perhaps a confidence thing that we need to over. But yeah, pricing's really interesting. And I've got the value-based fees book, you know, that's an interesting going in with this is what we're bringing to your project. Give us 8%. It'd be interesting to look at the outcomes of the different pricing strategies. But on the whole, I think people need to be really mindful, because it's a big lever, that one, in terms of your sort of timing. If you got to make some money quickly, you might want to run a promotion on a certain price point. But equally, you'll literally see a cause and effect with that, whereas a lot of the other things take longer to come to fruition. You know, a promotion may take a while actually to work if it's a more brand positioning thing.
Yes. I think that's another thing. We were talking about objectives earlier. I think one thing that's often missed as well is thinking about the long-term objectives as well as short-term objectives. You need to make sure that you've got both.
Yes.
And you know, your long-term objectives should fit in with your vision.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is more about brand awareness, because a lot of engineering firms, it depends on what they do, but some of the engineering firms, it's something a firm may need once in 10 years sometimes. But you want them to be thinking of your brand when that happens, and you don't know when that's going to happen.
That's right. And the evolution of your brand is going to change. So if you're a new entrant to the market, nobody knows you, you may go in at a lower price point because you kind of have to prove your worth. You're not the established player. So you've got, you know, you might be a bit more agile on prices to win the work. But of course, then as you become the kind of incumbent supplier, that's then, you know, you've got to guard that space. So it really is tactics. It sounds like a game of chess when we're talking. But yeah, so it's been interesting, I think, when companies I've worked with, to see that realization that, well, actually now we're the ones who are seen as established, and here's this new person who might have worked for you.
Yes, that's often the case.
So they've gone off. They were a consultant. Now they've got their own thing. But can they actually? And this is actually a good segue into what arguably sounds the dullest of the P's of marketing: process. But along with values is kind of in the business space is the crux, because
absolutely, you
don't have standard operating procedures, or at least clearly defined processes, you won't scale.
Yes.
Or, well, you'll find it harder to scale. that delivery of the quality, service, consistency that you need to build a brand. And I think that, people want to skip that and they're like, yeah, we'll just hire somebody to do this. It's like, well, will they do it like you? Oh, I don't know. Does it matter? Well, possibly yes, because your brand's on the line and your brand's a promise. So I get quite fired up on.
Yes. And I think, again, to jump into anyone who's maybe not so familiar with marketing and our terminology, your brand is the core of who you are and what you do. It's not just your logo, your colors, or your font. It's who you are and what you represent to the customers.
The way you do business. And it's so that's when I've worked in the larger corporates. I started my career in the motor industry, and they would spend a lot of money on advertising campaigns for TV, consumer. But, if then you have a bad experience at your local dealer who carries the same logo, the same mark,
Yes.
but is a completely different experience to the aspirational sort of TV face of the brand, you had this disconnect. And I mean, I learned that as a junior marketer, that we're going for a seamless experience is what you want. And I think small companies can do well in this because they can control the process and be on it and see, literally almost sometimes physically see their team delivering the service or speaking to customers. But, and also it works quite well with the sort of technical brain, if I might say that. The process-led, the kind of engineering mind can lend itself really well to being methodical, repetitive, but in a good way, because that is building layer upon layer of trust with the customer. So that can be actually arguably the most valuable asset you have.
Yeah.
To build up this book of processes that is your secret sauce or your customer advantage. And
it means as you grow, you don't lose track.
Yeah.
You see that quite a lot. A company grows really fast and then they're really disorganized because they haven't built that foundation of the processes.
And if you're going to different sites or different markets, different countries, unless you land really lucky with just getting some amazing staff members who, by osmosis, seem to know how you do it your way.
Yeah.
You really need this stuff. And it also, having been through the journey of employee ownership, when you come to exit your business, having this is gold dust, because you are effectively ensuring the business can survive without the founders.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think for engineering businesses, that's pretty important, because you need one eye on the future and a possible exit.
Yeah. No founder or managing director is going to be there forever. So
so that's a processes. People go, but actually get that right, and you've built something that's probably scalable.
Yes.
Market conditions are right, and then woohoo. So
I think we've touched on people already, how key that is.
I know. And I put a LinkedIn post up yesterday because I'd been at a big concert, and I had a post to the lead singer because he was wearing the merchandise.
Oh, yes, I remember seeing that. Yeah.
But the point, you know what we're like, marketers, you can't switch us off. But I was like, that's brilliant. He's wearing that. And I mean, we just bought t-shirts for all the people I was with, because that's what you do at a Muse gig, get a t-shirt. But the point of that was, like, your people, they literally can wear your brand. And I mean, a lot of us maybe have workwear, factory settings or whatever. But even thinking out with that, is there stuff, can you have car stickers? Would you have, it kind of touches on that physical P as well. But when you're getting team photos, taken, you know, what other embodiments of the brand have you got? A mascot? Have you got something fun? Have you got some promotional flags? I mean, we're straying away from people, but it's almost, you know, they're an asset. They need to have the right materials, the right tools, and you can get the team to work for you quite well.
And they need to understand what the brand is. And again, going back to the values, the brand proposition, the mission, they need to understand that. I mean, there's a lot of research out there that brand focused, in the true sense of brand companies, where all the people understand what the brand is and where they personally fit into that, are much more profitable, and grow faster than other businesses.
And I think it's great for smaller businesses. So we're talking about Offshore Europe, the big oil and gas show, as it was anyway.
Yeah, I remember those days.
All companies, you know, we wanted to be there for the credibility factor, but the stand costs alone, you know, buying stand space and then putting something on it. So the first year, our sort of brand strategy, we were disruptors, because we were in quite an established engineering space. So we took a couple of students to Offshore Europe. Because the company was called Merlin, we dressed them as wizards, and they walked around Offshore Europe handing out some branded pens and notepads as people were going into conference slots. It worked pretty well for a kind of low cost PR stunt.
Yeah.
And we also did, because Ian, the founder, was a flyer, he flew his plane over Offshore Europe, and we managed to get onto STV by just
brilliant.
a bit of a brass neck walk up to the press office. But, you know, these things were a little bit out the box. But for a small company, these kind of tactics are really worth.
Yes.
And how can we do something different?
I think a lot of engineering companies feel they have to be really, really, because they need to build the credibility, I think they also always have to be really, really serious as well, and can't involve humor.
Yeah,
that's not true at all.
Absolutely.
People don't think less of you just because you're amusing or because you've done something different or interesting. They remember you because of that.
Oh, and there's so I mean, recently I was working with a satellite company, and one of the things I couldn't help but look outside and just see all these big white dishes. And I know, you know, now you can vinyl wrap anything.
Yes.
And you know, brand colors. I was like, can't we do something? So I'll leave that one pending if there's any satellite companies watching. But you know, these kind of things are a little bit, sometimes the people in the company say, well, that's a bit gimmicky. But we're wanting to get people to stop and look.
Yeah.
And everyone has busy lives. And I think maybe there's a comment on, you know, although we're at work in that engineering role, say, we're also consumers, and we're also, and the boundary between work and play, leisure, has probably shifted so much that it's, you know, it's a lot more fluid. And I think we've got to give ourselves permission to think more like a consumer at work and think, well, actually, if I saw a spaceship or a car that's been branded, that's covered in grass because we've got a revolutionary lawn cutter, or, you know, just stuff that's really like, wow, we're trying to stop people and get them to go, notice me, often as marketers, and that's increasingly hard because of the volume of information and activity.
Yes. And I think that's a really important point as well, because another thing that I come across talking to sometimes, you know, the founder of business is an engineer themselves, and they think every technical detail needs to be included in every piece of communication, because, oh, well, my customers are engineers, which is often the case for engineering companies. They're dealing with engineers, but those engineers are really busy and have all sorts of other engineering products and services they have to think about on a day-to-day basis, and they are bombarded with messages. You need to grab their attention before they will look at those technical details.
Absolutely. And just reaching out to them on a more human level.
Yes.
Humor, or even something on, is touching the emotional side. I
Yeah.
mean, if your product has got environmental benefits, maybe just presenting them with the happy smiley face of somebody who's a recipient of a grant or something through your charitable arm or something. There's all these different ways to engage, and we're yeah, I think you're right. I think we can be guilty of being very like, oh, well, it's technical and we have to be serious, and that's a bit out there.
But
But
engaging with people on an emotional level, like you say, they're humans.
Yeah, and we shouldn't.
And if they engage on an emotional level to your communications, they're going to remember you better and be more inclined to. They almost feel like they know you,
yes,
because they've engaged on that level, so they feel more comfortable dealing with you.
Yeah, well. I think, and this is where, back to the sort of general principles of marketing, some of this stuff is removing obstacles.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know them, or I'm not sure, or are they a local company? Oh, I don't know. So if we remove obstacles, like, because we've presented our local knowledge or a fun fact, or then it increases that familiarity, that trust. And these are very much what you need to do to make a decision from the customer, the client's point of view. They're looking at this company going, I don't know. So yeah, plenty of good sort of soft marketing tactics in that that we shouldn't overlook.
Absolutely. And I think that was a really good point what you just said about removing barriers, because I think small companies are in a really good position to be agile and make it easier to deal with them, because big companies are really good at putting barriers in.
Imagine. Yeah.
You have to fill out all these forms, and you have to spend so much to be a direct customer. Otherwise, you can deal with our distributors. We don't want to know you. Whereas a small company, you're in a better position to take all those barriers down in every sense, within your processes, within as you say, within your marketing communications, with everything.
Yeah. And that's if you spot a trend or something's not working with your product or service, you could be on that trying to and communicating. I think people are scared of PR. They don't want to go on the TV, they don't want to go on the radio, whatever. And actually, it's quite good fun. And if you've done something that's going to really make your product or service better, why wouldn't you want to share it? So whether you put it on social media, I think the key there is freedom within a framework. You want to have checks and balances, so you don't have people just jumping on social media under your company name with any old stuff. You want to make sure that it's spelt right. I'm a bit old school on just that, make sure it's, and again, that's back to values. Like if you've nailed your tone, because you know that your brand is professional yet engaging, and you want to come over as really skilled but also very human, all of these things. In fact, that's a point just to do with branding. I think people, like you say, it's not just your logo, it's your tone of voice.
Yes.
And getting that kind of stuff nailed early on, particularly if you're a startup. Just giving a little bit of thought to your branding so it's fuller than just a logo and colors.
Yes. Yeah, those little icons as well that you can use.
Yeah.
There'll be something within your logo that you can use, and people, oh, that's them. It's sort of, and brings, going back to emotions, that then as soon as they see something, it reminds them of you. It brings up those emotions they feel about you as well, which are hopefully positive.
A little flame emoji. I'm never quite sure how to take that. I'm like, does that mean I'm on fire, or I burnt my chances?
But yeah, absolutely, tone of voice is really, really important. But I think that's something where some of these scheduling, the things that can make smaller businesses' lives easier, such as scheduling tools. You can have various people have access to it and put stuff on it, but then you have one person checking it and editing it and just making sure it's correct and has the
Yeah.
right tone of voice, and yeah.
Yeah, and that's so just touching on that, we were chatting about AI a little bit in there, and I'm no expert, but just seeing some of the particularly for like content marketing, so writing blogs or longer form articles, website content. I mean, you do want somebody to edit it, somebody knows.
Yes, going back to that tone of voice, make sure that is right.
Yeah, make sure it sounds like you and it's not just drivel. But equally, I think for the small business who maybe don't have a full-time marketing person, they don't have the time to sit with a blank sheet of paper or a blank screen going, right, what am I going to write about? So I've been using ChatGPT a little bit for precisely that. And I'm
Great
really
prompt, even just for ideas, if you've stumped for ideas.
just exactly. And for, spotting sort of trending topics, this kind of, going in and seeing what's happening, what's the latest thing. And I had a little tip the other day. They said if you use Bing as your search engine, Bing Chat is the latest version of Chat GPT, which is free if you use Bing, but it's not free if you use Chat GPT 4. There we go. Free. Yeah, so I got quite a lot. In fact, I even saw one called GPT Boss, where you have a whole load of virtual experts, but that's maybe that's the next step for me.
And I feel, and it is really important. Again, I just want to reiterate: don't just be lazy and use it for the content itself on its own, and don't edit it, and don't, because I mean, what if your competitors using exactly the same AI? You'll have identical blogs and identical, and you won't be distinctive at all.
No.
So it's really, really important to use it in the right way.
Yeah, because the whole thing is, I mean, this is rapidly evolving new technology, and I think there'll be penalties for AI generated content in some of the platforms. So it's not an absolute silver bullet. Like anything, we need a bit of discretion, a bit of intelligence to kind of take the good stuff out. But yeah, good. And also the increasing use of I don't know the technical term, but the tools that will connect things. So if you've got a customer relationship management system, connecting that to your website.
API.
Yes, that's it. API. So
some CRMs are actually part of marketing automation, which may sometimes there's a subscription, but HubSpot is not the only one out there. I feel I should mention something like if you don't have the budget for HubSpot, there is Active Campaigns, quite a good one. It's sort of and yes, it costs, but if it saves you a lot of time, time is money, and if you don't have the resources time-wise, it's worth looking into these things.
Absolutely. And I think it's a natural, again, it's sort of an evolution, depending if you're a startup, you're perfectly fine to start with an Excel spreadsheet of customers. The point is the process, really. Recording. I mean, as long as you're doing that, however you're keeping the data, at some point it can get swept up into something more sophisticated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not just, out there doing business left, right, and center, and not getting any sort of records or any good data, because the things, again, back to increasing automation, and there's a lot you can do. There are programs out there now that find all the trends in your customers that you might not see.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite exciting. So it's loads of opportunity for the future. But I guess where we're at now, you and I are clearly vital to be directing the traffic here. But no, I think it's a really exciting time, actually. Because as I was saying, post-COVID, I think a lot of us in our business life have kind of reevaluated where we're at. Brands are needing to recognize that their customer base may have changed in the way they want to do business.
Absolutely.
It gives rise to new products and services even. And it feels quite like a big refresh is coming, and that's exciting. So we'll go.
Yes, yeah, and I think even those tactics, those have changed in a lot of ways simply because it varies from industry to industry, but some industries they don't forward the phones. People are in their office, home office, and you can't get them on the phone anymore, whereas you might view. But then other industries they are
Yeah.
based there, and they are so that's again comes back to knowing your customer and understanding whether that's so and direct mail.
Yes.
Don't discount direct mail because it's old fashioned, especially lumpy mail. People get so little post now, they get excited when they get something, especially if it's not a bill.
That's true, actually, and I've seen some great tactics over the years. I've seen some really. I'm quite big on papercraft as a hobby, and I saw a brilliant piece of direct mail from an architecture firm, and it was a little house that kind of, when you opened it, the house it was flat and it just popped up when you opened the envelope, and it was just a simple piece of paper engineering, but what an impact, because you're like, whoa, that's clever. Who are these guys? So no, dead right. I mean, it's all, and that's the whole thing about context. It's like
Absolutely.
that might have not worked 10 or 5 years ago when you were just swamped with junk mail, but now that it's a bit more
yeah and then everyone switched to email because it's so cheap, but now everyone's swamped with email, so open rates and click-through rates are plummeting because I certainly don't have time to look at every email I get.
It's too much. We're saturated. So no, it's a good point. How do you achieve that standout for your particular market? And it could be something as simple as a piece of promotional, like a ruler or something. The things that it's actually really handy because you're like, oh, I really need that. Or
if you know your market, there's something that's really useful to them. Could be gauges, it can be, anything.
Tally books, things that for a particular, and to be a particular size to go in a particular pocket, like on a boiler suit on an oil rig. Or I spent a lot of time looking at tally books back in the day.
But yeah, and then if they use it, they keep it on them, and they keep being reminded of your brand.
No, absolutely. And I'm quite looking forward actually to a couple of the clients I'm working with at the moment. I'm just looking at promotional items for them, and just what's current, what's new, because everything from like wildflower seeds pressed into paper, that you can so want an environmental message in your brand, you can subtly do it, or so it doesn't all just have to be back to stress balls and the pen. Although I'm still
one way back when I was working for very briefly for an agency before I went client side, before I set up my own agency. One of the things that they did, unfortunately, contact list was the problem. They wasn't an up-to-date contact list, but I thought the campaign was really good. The creative director sent out here's some spare socks because we're about to knock your socks off with your next campaign.
Quite good. I do like a bit of humor and a bit of a pun sort of thing going on.
Yeah, it just bought a whole bunch of socks from Tesco. And they're useful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
not like they go in the bin.
Full of them one do. I still keep. I mean, this was a pen, when you're out the catalogs, but because we were doing like extended reach drilling, and it felt to me like a sort of, I don't know, you probably can't see it very well.
Yeah.
That sort of spiral thing.
Yeah.
Like, because we were trying to get animations made of kind of spirals going around. So there's always something that you think, oh, that's back to that piece about your brand and how can you take it through the usual office essentials even.
But you can't do any of that if you don't do the foundations, looking at the situation, really doing all that research on your customers and really understanding them, your target market, your the wider environment, etc. So yeah.
I mean, I remember a great debate once where a marketing agency had told us they thought we should make a really nice coffee table book for senior managers in at the big established oil and gas companies that we were trying to pitch too. And, you know, there was all a discussion about these guys are really busy. And when they've got time off, are they going to sit there with a beautiful book of black and white pictures of the oil field? Nah, I don't. And there's just, and that was a kind of not really knowing, you know, that might be a beautiful thing, a coffee table book for photographers and, you know, people with time. I don't know. It just, the kind of busy executive we were after was probably after he'd done his 12 hours in the office or something, was going home to have to get stuck in with the family. And this idea of sitting around gazing at pictures of nodding donkeys or something just didn't fit. And it was quite an interesting know your customer, know what they would find fun or interesting or stand out. So we ended up getting like quality multi-tools engraved, because that was just kind of like a handy thing that they might actually keep on. And probably equate, it was probably cheaper than
probably cheaper as well.
So,
yeah. And I think that talking about that, I've had to pick up the pieces of for clients who've been dealing with a marketer who's not. So I think if anyone comes to you saying that they're a marketer, they can do your marketing strategy for you, and they jump to tactics, run away.
That's a good point, because there's a lot of people out there purporting to be, you know, the greatest thing since sliced bread. And there are, I mean, there's a set of skills in the digital space, you know, particularly digital advertising, that is a great skill set, but actually a very tight one, because these people are doing that every day. So you may need those kind of skills, but that doesn't mean that they are the best person to advise on something like professional or a PR strategy. I mean, I'm a general.
It's not unusual for me to actually be referred clients from a specialist, because they've gone to them and they've gone, okay, so where does this fit in your strategy? And they're like, my what?
Oh, I thought this is all we were having to do. And it's like, okay, it's not really going to bring you the results you want if we're just doing. But equally, I mean, I've got a network, I'm sure you have as well, of specialist people, so that
absolutely,
I can write a good press release, but if we're trying to get really sustained coverage over a 6-month period and it's in a particular paper, I might think, you know, I know somebody who's got great relationships there. It's not my area, whatever. So I think that's good as well. We often have a team. We've got this because it's a huge area, marketing, as we've.
It is, absolutely, and no one's truly a jack of all trades. I mean, I'm pretty good at copywriting. I'm pretty good at social media. I'm used to working small teams where I had to do bits and bobs. But if it needs anything more complex in terms of graphic design than, you know, simple template for a social media post or something like that, I will put you in touch with a graphic designer. If you need a website, I will put you in touch with the right person for you, or right agency for you that fits with you. So if anyone comes to you and says they can literally do everything themselves, question that.
They're going to be pretty busy. That's good. So I think I mean, we touched on earlier the SOSTAC thing about the control being and measuring being the sort of final part of this marketing strategy. So you've got a lot of different tactics going on over a certain amount of time. And I think it's important as well for smaller firms, you know, obviously that realization that you can't be going at everything all at once. I mean, there's a day job servicing the customers. So to be thinking that you can be hitting, you know, the website, the PR, direct mail campaigns, e-newsletters, there's that trade show, have we done any networking? It's not realistic. And so I'm pretty pragmatic where we look at what a client can do. But a lot of it, again, is about making it a process. So maybe it's once a month we have the big social media powwow, and we get signed up for a month, or you do it weekly, whatever. But so that then you come back 3 months later, or you defined times, and you say, right, how do we get on with that? Um,
And what are the trends over time once you've got some time under the belt? Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, some of the things take a little while. I think things like email newsletters can take a while maybe to see the value, because people, it's that kind of, okay, it's a touch point of your brand. They're like, oh yeah, that's them, or that's them. But then if they begin to feel that you deliver quality, useful content, relevant, timely, then they won't unsubscribe, and they'll actually may not look forward to receiving it, but they're like, oh yeah, it's you again. Oh yeah, oh that's a good idea. That's a good tip. Or so I think making sure that you're doing a bit of that control measurement, obviously,
Yeah.
is key.
And looking at thinking about so was this tactic to do with our long-term objectives or short-term objectives, and take a bit of a thought around that, like say email, for example. It takes a long time. Organic social media often takes quite a long time to. Organic, by the way, is the non-paid for social media as opposed to the paid for.
No, I think that's a good point. And also on that, not just, there's a vanity thing with social media statistics. Everybody wants to think they're getting more followers, they're getting, but of course we know that the crux that is essentially a bit vanity. It's a vanity stat in some respects.
Who are your followers?
Are they relevant? Are they even in your funnel as a prospect? We're looking for,
and if they're not, do you need to tweak your messaging?
Exactly. And I think that's again, smaller businesses can be a little bit more reactive to go, oh great, I've picked up all these great new followers, but just that, all right, hang on, that's really great, I think, but let's have a look. And are they converting? Are they buying your product or service? No. Are they inquiring? No. Okay. And then it should be easier to sort of get in and fix it than the whole multi-level corporate where, oh, we'll have to speak to marketing. So you've got the dynamism to hopefully get in and see what's happening. But it can be really interesting, can't it? How you almost can't understand why a certain post did well.
Yes, that you do have to. Don't look at it. I think that's another thing. Don't look at it under the microscope. Look at trends over time, because sometimes it's the luck of the draw. A particular person spotted it and they've got a lot of connections, and that's why that particular post did really well. Or so
I mean, when the late Queen passed, a charity I work with, we had a big sales drive on for tickets for a show, and obviously, and we had TV ads lined up for it, and the news was dominated by the passing of the late Queen. So the TV ad, so nothing performed, and that's fine. But if you just looked at the facts, you'd think,
yeah.
Oh, and it was like, well, no, it was the news agenda that caused this. Nobody was thinking about buying tickets when there was this shocking news. So I think it's important, like you say, you look at trends over time and you've got a bit of insight into it, right? Well, that actually is not a typical day when that happened. We got no sales because something else was dominating. So
yeah. So I had one of my clients, we had a really huge spike one day, and it was because it was a post about a client who makes robots, and people just like robots.
Yeah,
that's all it was.
Yes, everyone's like, woohoo. I know. And I mean, on that, there's some, just being opportunistic, I suppose, in your mindset is interesting there, because where you see something on, I don't know, EastEnders, or, you're watching the TV and it brings up something that's relevant to your product or service, it's so good to have that spontaneity. Again, back to the sort of framework where you got to know whoever's posting it's not had 4 pints of lager while they're watching.
And it's really got to genuinely be relevant. Don't turn it into...
Yeah, but there can be some just that funny thing, or if you've actually even seen your product, that would be amazing. Yes. But sometimes things can just catch you like that, and that kind of riding the wave can be kind of fun.
Yes.
I think as long as you're prepared, there are trolls and all that, but there's ways and means, aren't there, of turning off comments and things, like knowing the tools to the degree that you can.
And sometimes you just don't panic if you get a negative comment, because 9 times out of 10, either you've got a really good answer to it, and actually it would be better. It's better than not even having a negative comment in the first place. Or sometimes your customers will pile in on them.
That's what I've seen
for you.
I mean, they're like, no, I found this the best thing ever. And you're like, there, job done.
Yeah. Don't panic.
Don't panic. That's a good tip. So yeah, so
hopefully small engineering business out there have got some ideas now, and work to help work with the small budgets that they have.
Yeah. And looking out for training. I mean, Business Gateway do some amazing training.
Yes.
Seed, I know you do a lot of training, Samantha, with Seed, and that's a great organization as well. So there's a lot out there that can help. So I'd be looking for workshops, things like that. If you don't feel you got enough marketing know-how, but you're maybe a solo entrepreneur, or your team's not got the skills in-house, there's plenty of help out there, people like ourselves notwithstanding.
Yes, absolutely.
Happy to help, always happy to have a coffee. Absolutely. And give a listening ear, and hopefully a tactic or two once we've got the strategy sorted.
And I'll put links for Business Gateway and Seed when I put this out. That's Centre for Engineering Education and Development. And Debbie, have you got anything to plug?
Yes, I'll have to come up with something on the hook. I mean, I'm just getting my own website up and running, because I'm now consulting on my own behalf. So Griffin Perth will have some online content coming soon, and I'll be putting that out also on my LinkedIn. I think I'm really interested in this small business space. So time-saving tips and techniques, ways to think outside the box a little. I'll be putting some content on that, and I'll put it out through LinkedIn, probably from it'll probably be September till I'm fully up and running, because I'm planning to have a bit of a summer with family and the kids.
Good for you. Excellent.
Yeah,
excellent.
That's the plan. It may not.
I'll also include the link for your LinkedIn on when I put this out. And when your website is live, I will then go back and update it, so we've got your website there as well.
Oh, thanks, Samantha. No, I really appreciate it. It was a fortuitous day when I met you. I feel we're kindred spirits. So
yes, absolutely. Definitely on the same wavelength.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for watching.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Bye. Have a good weekend.